This week in Texas, we sit down with two candidates vying for the Democratic nomination for the United States Senate, Colin Allred and James Talarico, both of whom are touting the endorsements of other elected politicians. But do those endorsements matter? Our political insiders, strategist Court Koenig and Angel Carroll, offer their insights. And they weigh in on Metro pumping classical music into a bridge underpass to discourage loitering. We have reports from Liliana Pearson and Nick Notario for a new episode of This Week in Texas. And hello again, I'm Tom Abrams. Thanks so much for joining us. We begin This Week in Texas with classical music. If you're often in downtown Houston near the Metro hub, you may have noticed an unusual sound mixing in with the typical traffic. It is classical music blaring from speakers at the Fannin and Main intersections under the Pierce Elevated. Liliana Pearson went looking for who put the speakers there and why.
The traffic near this downtown underpass makes the area pretty loud on its own, but take a listen. These speakers down here, they're playing classical music. It's pretty loud and it seems to be on a loop. So why is that music playing? Well, people who spend time here at this underpass, they tell us they have an idea.
If you want to hear a stirring rendition of the classical composition, The Blue Danube, you may choose to attend the Houston Symphony or catch a visiting performer. You probably wouldn't think of finding it at a busy downtown underpass.
It was good to listen to, but after a while, keep listening to the same thing. Sometimes I start humming and I'm like...
It's mostly the unhoused you'll find spending significant amounts of time at the Pierce Elevated underpasses at Main and Fanning. Those we spoke to say they remember hearing the music for months, others say years. What they could agree on is why it's classical music.
It should be a bigger selection.
Loud and on a loop.
Because of the homeless and all the other things that go on through the city, and they're right here under the bridge all the time.
We reached out to the mayor's office, city council, and Metro to figure out who installed the speakers, if the music is in fact to deter people from camping and sitting at these underpasses.
I just put up with it.
And what other resources are being provided to those in need. So far, no one has responded to our inquiries.
I'm homeless.
David, who's experiencing homelessness, says he feels it does keep people on the move and dangerous activity, such as drug dealing, is lower, at least in this area. But he's not sure this is the answer either.
Just give us some help. If y'all come out and give us the right help that we need, we won't have to sit out here all day.
David was happy to share with us that he was recently approved for housing. He's going to be moving at the end of the month. He says he's looking forward to getting off the streets and away from this music. We also spent some time looking into if other cities are playing classical music in certain areas. Reports I found coming out of Los Angeles where certain city departments and even businesses have acknowledged they play loud classical music to try to deter homeless people from being in certain areas. From downtown Houston, Liliana Pearson, ABC13 Eyewitness News.
After Liliana's initial reporting, Metro acknowledged it is responsible for the speakers and the music. It put them there, it tells ABC13, in part to improve safety at a nearby employee parking lot and also to deter the homeless from spending time at that underpass. For more on the creative approach, we bring back in our political insiders, Court Koenig and Angel Carroll. Court, we'll start with you. Your thoughts about this?
Well, I would say that, of the options, probably the best option. There's probably not a lot of CDs that are owned by this particular group of people that are being played out loud. What would you want, a request line there at the Metro stops for that? It'd be interesting to know once this plays out a little longer. It's been used in other municipalities and areas. What is the results that we're finding? Is it just making them mad, or is it really deterring the folks that you want to deter and making the crime go down and things of that nature? It's an interesting subject, but I don't think they're playing Sweet Home Alabama on the loudspeaker.
Angel, your thoughts? I know Houston has been very creative in dealing with the homeless population. It's got national attention for the way that it's dealt with homeless people in the past. Your thoughts about this approach?
Yeah, I mean, if this is really about public safety, I say show us the data. Is it really working and where is our money going to? But I have to add, I actually think this is incredibly inhumane. I think we should be talking less about how to clear the underpasses and how we can prevent the underpasses from becoming someone's home in the first place.
That's one of the comments in the story that we aired, talked about that. Give us some help as opposed to just playing the music.
Absolutely. So I say we should support policies and initiatives that actually invest in programs around affordable health care, mental health and outreach services. Other cities are doing it. Their metro departments are doing it. And I'd love to see the Metro Department be a part of those conversations to ensure that these individuals have reliable transportation to those services.
Metro's responsibility is to move people from point A to point B, mass people, and not to deal with a homeless problem necessarily. They can be a help in that. It's not their responsibility. It's a federal government program that gets money from the feds to do what they need to do. And they got buses and trains and things like that they need to be dealing with, and not a homeless problem.
All right. Your final thought.
I'd like to see public funded money go towards reliable transportation and not torturing the unhoused.
All right, both of you, thank you. Interesting topic to discuss. When we come back, conversations with candidates for the U.S. Senate, Colin Allred and James Talarico. Welcome back. I'm joined now by Colin Allred. He's a former congressman from North Texas, and he is running for the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate. Thanks so much for being with us. Good to see you again. Tell me how this time around it is different in the way that you're campaigning and what your message might be.
Well, I feel like we're in a very different place as a state and as a country, and I feel in a very different place. And what I really wanted to make sure we did in this election was try to reconnect with working class people who I think were made a lot of promises to in the last election about inflation going away on day one and their lives are going to get so much easier. And I think they were lied to. And I take that personally because that's my story, being raised by a single mother and struggling. And I know what these folks are going through. And so I've tried everything I can to try and go to working class folks, whether it's at construction sites or in restaurants or at high school football games, to make sure we're talking about what we can do together to address what they're going through right now, and that I went through it too, and then I have ideas on what we can do to fix it.
What did you learn from the first time around that you've now implemented in this second campaign that makes it different?
Well, I've really been enjoying having so much time, and now that I'm not in Congress, to go to the community events and really ground myself in what's happening in a community. To spend 3 or 4 days in an area and talking to folks about what's happening there. I just left the Valley where my family's from. My family's from Brownsville, where my grandfather was a customs officer, and hearing stories about the fear that people are experiencing there based on actions of this administration, the impact of tariffs, but also seeing kind of the determination and some of the pride, and having a chance to really work through that and talk to folks about what we can do to address what I think Texans are looking for, which is opportunity, affordability, and someone who actually cares about them more than just their political career or one person. And I think that's what I see too much on the other side.
So you're hearing from people that your message aligns with what they want?
Well, I think, we're in a moment where I think many people feel like they're working harder for less. And they feel like things are kind of upside down, that they're seeing on TV that the stock market is setting records, and that there's people who are kind of openly corrupt, who are cutting corners, but they're working harder and harder, and they're not getting ahead. And they're not seeing that in their lives, that their birthday parties, their quinceañeras, their Christmas plans are more expensive than they've been, and they're working as hard as they possibly can. And they're wondering, does anybody see them? Does anybody know what they're going through? I do. Right? That's my story. And so, I've put out a plan for a more affordable Texas. I have, concrete ideas on what we have to do. But I think even more than just those individual planks, it's the notion that, do you understand that folks, many working people out there, that inflation is still outpacing their wage growth, that they literally are bringing home less, they're spending less time with their kids, and that they feel like they're kind of treading water and need somebody to help them get out of that.
So I'm going to use a football analogy here. I know when you played in the NFL and in college, you would always look week to week. You were always concerned about the game in front of you.
Yeah, that's right.
So in politics, you have the primary and then you have the general election. How much time do you spend focusing on the primary versus the general election?
That's a good question, and I like the way you put it. And I think that's certainly true. We have to win the race that's in front of us, right? And I think that I'm the best candidate because I'm the best candidate for the general election, because I've won tough elections. I've overperformed in the last election, where even though we weren't successful, we did much better than many folks around the state, and that we have something to build on. That I'm trusted, I'm tested, and sort of ready to go. But I also want to make sure that as we're pursuing votes in the primary, I often approach it the same way I do the general election, which is that I'm going to tell folks who I am, what I stand for, and what I want to do, and I'm going to let them make their decision on who they think is best positioned to represent them. I'm not someone who swings very far from one election to another. I don't think that'd be very authentic, first of all, but I also don't think that it works. I have ideas on what I want to do that I'm talking about right now that I'll also talk about should I be the nominee.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just want to say that I've really enjoyed going to some of the homecoming games recently here in Houston for both the colleges, but also some of the high schools. I think that there's so much pride around our education and our schools, and I've really enjoyed being here, and to have the endorsement and support of some of my friends here in Houston. To me, this is becoming a second home as a Dallas guy. That really means a lot to me, and to have folks like Lizzie Fletcher and others come out and endorse me and support me has made me feel very much at home here.
How much do you think endorsements matter, especially in a primary?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just what we're trying to do is show that we can build a broad coalition. And I think that's largely what it's about. To win in Texas, but just to win any election, you have to have a broad coalition of folks who you can bring together around a central idea. And I've done that to win a very tough race for Congress in Dallas. I had to win not just Democrats, but also Republicans and independents, and broad cross-section of our community. That's what we have to do here in this race, and I think these endorsements help show that we're doing that here too.
Now I'm joined by State Representative James Talarico. He is a candidate for the U.S. Senate on the Democratic side. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us how the campaign is going. We last spoke I think the day or day after you announced your run. What have you seen so far?
I mean, I think my campaign and I have been overwhelmed by the response all over Texas, the number of people showing up for our events in every corner of the state, the number of people signing up to volunteer or donate on our website. And then today we are announcing that we have earned the endorsement of more than 100 elected officials in every part of Texas. So we've got the momentum in this race. We're going to keep our foot on the gas. We're going to keep building a movement that can take power back for working people in every community across the state.
Speaking of those endorsements, do you think they matter in a race like this?
I do. Running in a state as big as Texas is not easy. We have so many different kinds of communities all over the state, and it's helpful to have local leaders informing me about the issues that local communities face so that as senator, I can fight for every single person in Texas. And so I'm really proud that we've earned all these endorsements from El Paso to Beaumont, from the halls of Congress to our local school boards, from our biggest cities to our smallest towns. I'm really blessed and honored to have this amount of support from our local leaders all across Texas.
What challenges do you face campaigning in a state the size of Texas?
Well, I'm the new kid on the block. I'm the outsider in this race. And so my challenge is getting in front of as many folks as I can before the election to make sure they can hear about my values, my vision, and also so I can hear from them about their concerns, their hopes, their dreams, their fears. And that's not easy in a state of 30 million people. It's why I've been hitting the road over the last 6 weeks to go to every corner of the state. And it's why I'm going to be on the road this week. Tomorrow I head to El Paso. I'm then going to go to Amarillo up in the Panhandle. So we're not leaving any stone unturned in this race. We're going everywhere, talking to everyone.
You mentioned when we spoke last that part of your message would be calling out Democrats where they are not on message. How has that been received by the people showing up at your events?
Well, I'm a proud Texas Democrat, but I already have a religion and I already have a sports team. I have no problem sharing hard truths with my party's leadership or calling out my party's establishment when it's not representing working people in states like Texas. And I've already done that on the campaign trail. I'm going to continue to do that because I want the Democratic Party to be better. I want us to be stronger. And I want us to start winning elections so that we can make people's lives better in communities across Texas. And that's my goal. And I have no problem speaking my mind or standing up to my own party when it's necessary.
It's a long race that seems to go by pretty quickly. Do you see yourself focusing solely on the primary at the moment, or is there a bigger picture at play? Do you have to plan for what happens if you win the primary?
I'm committed to winning my party's nomination and winning this primary election, but I'm not just talking to Democrats. I'm talking to independents and Republicans too. I'm talking to people who feel disillusioned with both political parties. I'm trying to build a grassroots movement across the state of Texas so we can take on the billionaire mega donors who have taken over our politics and take power back for working people. That is my hope, and that's bigger than any one political party. It's going to take all of us, and I'm starting that work now, not just after I win the nomination.
I would guess there's a bit of a challenge running in a primary where you tend to find the extremes of both parties show up almost every single time. But the vast swath of voters here in Texas and across the country tend to be those independents and moderates, people who feel like they don't necessarily have a party. How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think people are really tired of the extreme polarization in our politics. They are ready for a candidate and a campaign that can bring us together across all of these lines of division that honestly have been manufactured by social media platforms and predatory algorithms that tear us apart. And they do that for their own profit. Conflict gets a lot more clicks, which makes these platforms a lot more money. The goal of this campaign is to bring people together across all these divisions so that we can take power back for working people in communities all over Texas.
Speaking of clicks, what role does social media play in this campaign?
I mean, for better or for worse, that's where most people get their information now. And so I'm on all the social media platforms, communicating directly with people all over the state. But I'm trying to resist the politics of division that we've seen over the last 10 years. I'm talking about unity. I'm talking about what we have in common. I'm talking about how we can love our neighbors again. I think that's the only way we're going to get this state and this country back on track.
Anything else you want to add?
I just want to emphasize how proud I am to have the support of more than 100 different elected officials across Texas, particularly in the Houston area. We've got community leaders across Houston and Fort Bend who are helping us make sure that we're meeting the needs of people in this area of our state. And I'm going to be listening and relying on them if I'm elected as the next U.S. Senator from Texas.
Let's talk more about endorsements. You heard Allred and Talarico tout some of their endorsements, and this week several Texas social conservative groups endorsed incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn. But does any of it really matter? For their perspectives, we bring back our political insider, strategist Court Kenning and Angel Carroll. Angel, we'll start with you. Your thoughts about endorsements and whether they move the needle?
I think generally they do, but it ultimately comes down to what the voters value in the context, who's giving the endorsement and what race we're actually talking about.
Court?
I would say that I did an informal survey of some of my friends, so consider the margin of error in that one. And actually, endorsements do matter. It matters when the endorsement comes from someone that matches you politically. For example, some podcast or radio talk show host or things like that endorse a candidate that has been on their program before and has really done the research about this candidate, holds a lot more weight than somebody that's playing in the music industry and just decided to play in politics for that week. So an endorsement by George H.W. Bush for president, that was president, versus an endorsement for George Strait, who's president of country music, may have a little bit different impact. But yes, I do think they have significant impact. And it gives some of these campaigns an extra week of activity.
Well, interestingly, I think there was twice that George H.W. Bush made endorsements for the race for mayor in Houston, and both times those candidates lost. I wonder if George Strait had endorsed, maybe it would have made a difference.
It still mattered, right? Didn't mean he was going to win, but it still mattered.
Well, and you know, I'm interested in the point that you make, and I'll ask you this, Angel. When you actually said it depends on the race and it depends on the candidate. Mm-hmm. What's the distinction?
I would say, I think back to Governor Abbott endorsing in local school board elections and that not turning out the way that the candidate or he expected it to. So I think it can backfire, and that's in races like that specifically. We're entering into a political environment where some voters don't want an elected who is quote unquote establishment backed. They see them as too cautious and disconnected. So it really varies.
And that's another interesting point, Court, because I think it plays on both sides. The establishment on both sides not necessarily popular right now.
Well, think about it. If you're a Republican candidate or even an office holder looking for a different office, and you got the endorsement of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, right now, it'd be good stuff. Now, 6-8 months from now or a year from now, may not be so good. It just depends, because politics flows and things happen, and every day is a year.
That's true.
You know, if I can add, I recently saw a race in another part of the state where you had someone running for Texas House, and their endorsement list included a long list of local ISD trustees and maybe one or two of their potential colleagues. I think that's concerning. That's great when I can see an entire list, but again, what race are we running? Who are you going to be working for? And what your background actually is.
I'll ask you this last question. What matters more, endorsements from fellow politicians or endorsements from famous people?
I would think that, at least on the Republican side, I would think that those whom that are endorsing from a like type of environment be other politicians when you're running for office. If you're running for a #1 country album in the world, then you're probably going to want to go for George Strait, but otherwise go with somebody that knows what politics is.
Your thoughts?
Hey, if Jasmine Crockett wanted to endorse me if I ran in the future, I'd take it. But if Beyonce wanted to endorse me as well, I'd take that as well.
Good point. I guess it just depends on the race, and it depends on who's doing the endorsing and at what time. Timing matters, right? President Trump's endorsement certainly has made a huge difference here in Texas. The question is, will that remain the case? Both of you, thank you for your perspectives on that. And when we come back, how Harris County wants to deal with panhandlers as a result of legislation that targets large Texas counties. Welcome back to This Week in Texas. A new proposal could crack down on panhandling in Harris County. If it's ultimately approved, it would ban panhandling on unincorporated streets and prevent roadside vendors. On Monday, ABC13's Nick Notario spoke with Harris County Commissioner Tom Ramsey, who introduced that proposal.
When I asked the commissioner's office exactly how big of an issue this is, within minutes they sent a list of nearly 10 different intersections across the area where they say this is a problem. Now, after Commissioner Tom Ramsey had the item stalled at the previous meeting, he brought it back to this upcoming agenda. This is something that could get you a ticket in unincorporated Montgomery County. Commissioners approved a new ordinance banning panhandling and street vending. If caught, the person faces a misdemeanor, a measure that could also be coming to Harris County.
I get as many calls on this issue as almost anything else that happens in Precinct 3.
Commissioner Tom Ramsey says the ordinance could prevent panhandlers and street vendors from being in lanes of traffic and medians. Instead, he says they would create nearby zones where people could collect money. When it comes to enforcement, he says the goal isn't to write tickets.
Enforcement provisions that prioritize warnings and referrals to social services for individuals experiencing homelessness or economic hardships.
Instead of an ordinance, commissioners may look deeper into panhandling. Commissioner Rodney Ellis says an option could be to study it to see if there are safety risks. Ellis worries a new ordinance could have unintended consequences. Tickets, he says, could put people behind bars in an already overcrowded jail.
I am worried about whether or not we would end up, as we try to do something about unhoused people, filling up that jail quicker than we intended.
Montgomery County's panhandling ordinance went into effect nearly 2 months ago. We reached out to the sheriff's office to see how many tickets have been written. So far, we haven't heard back. Harris County commissioners are set to take this up on Thursday. In downtown Houston, Nick Notario, ABC13 Eyewitness News.
And subsequent to Nick's report on Thursday, commissioners ended up not advancing the panhandling ban at the meeting. It was a split decision, 2-2. Judge Lena Hidalgo was not at court this week and did not vote. We'll be back with some final thoughts this week in Texas. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Texas. Remember, Election Day is November 4th, and if you haven't already voted, that's the day to do it. We'll have a wrap-up and analysis of the results on our next episode. For all of us here at This Week in Texas, I'm Tom Abrams. We hope you have a great week, and please be kind to one another.